Hey, watch your head. It's okay. I got this content from Niche Website Builders, and it's 47 articles. They draft the content for you in WordPress. I gave them some general instructions, but here's the thing. Whenever you start working with an agency or any writer or anything like that, you're going to get a few mistakes. There's going to be a few tweaks that you'll need to make. Some of it is going to be a pure mistake. Somebody misunderstood, someone didn't follow instructions exactly. And other pieces are going to be just the unexpected, and you won't know it until you start working with somebody. So in this video, I'm going to go over the specific issues, the specific tweaks that I had with Niche Website Builders. And basically, they were all pretty minor. All the problems were fixed within 2 to 3 days or so. And the longest portion of it was me actually going and looking at all the content and then figuring out exactly what I wanted to do as far as the changes, any mistakes or anything like that. So the biggest holdup was me. And if you're just checking in with this case study, there's another video that I published where I talk about how long it took to index in Google the 47 articles that I got. I published them all in one day, and I'll put a link in the description so you can check out that other video. So let's get to the 10 tips, the 10 things that you should do when you get content back from an agency or a writer, regardless if you're working with Niche Website Builders or anyone else. Some of these are going to be pretty broad. Others will be a little more specific and specific for things that I am looking for. So these 10 should get you a start, but you may find there's some things that you want to check out specifically or things that you don't care about that I do care about. So keep that in mind. This is a good starting point. So number one, this one's completely obvious. I maybe shouldn't even say it, but just review the content. You may be tempted to just hop in, especially if you're getting a large delivery of content. You may be tempted to just hit publish and maybe not read too much of it. At least that's what I tend to. I'm a little bit lazy sometimes and a little bit in a hurry. And if I'm not specifically interested in the content, it's really easy for me just not to pay too much attention. But because I'm doing this for a case study, I needed to look a little more carefully and go through it. Now, I skimmed it, and to be honest, you actually can outsource this piece. I have an executive assistant, a VA, who can generally help me with all sorts of stuff. She has an English degree, she has writing experience, so not only do I spot check it, but she goes through a little bit more carefully and reads everything and goes through every single word to make sure it's up to our standard of quality. As we move to number 2, we're going to start getting into the specifics. So one thing that I always wanted to check on is the subheadings. And there's one little tweak. This is actually one of the mistakes that we had. The subheadings obviously need to fit the content pretty well. It's nice if there's some sort of a keyword-driven scenario for it. In my case, it didn't matter too much. This was just kind of informational content in this batch, so I wasn't too concerned. However, there was one tweak that I wanted to make sure took place. So with subheadings, I typically do not want them to be a hyperlink. And sometimes, for some reason, a lot of writers, they make a subheading a link. And the reason why I don't want it to be a link is sometimes people don't know that it's a link. Subheadings are typically formatted differently anyway, so sometimes people don't realize it's a link, even if it's underlined and that sort of thing. Now, keep in mind, I don't have data to back this up. I haven't done a study or anything, but just as I look through people's content, sometimes I noticed that there were links and subheadings, and I didn't know it because the specific theme or the way that their content was formatted, you just don't know that the subheading is a link. So I don't want subheadings as a link. When Niche Website Builders submitted content to me, I asked for a couple samples up front, and then they had some links in the subheadings. I told them I don't want there to be links in the subheadings. However, part of the content, I would say like 1/3 to half of the content they submitted, had links in the subheading. Easy enough to fix. Basically, I think one of the writers didn't know that I don't want subheadings to be links. That is a personal choice. If you want subheadings to be the link, then maybe you give opposite instructions for whatever I gave. But the point is, double check that stuff. Whatever your preference is, let the company know. And I asked niche website builders to go back and fix it, and they did. Number 3 and number 4, I'm going to lump them together, is internal and external links. You may be using a tool like Link Whisper, you might not. You may want to kind of surgically and very carefully have internal links for a specific reason. If that's the case, you may want to do it yourself. You may not want to leave the internal links to the agency. It's totally up to you. You may be able to come up with some instructions and a nice system to make it easy for the company to add the links, but it's totally up to you. Same deal with the external links. Sometimes an agency or a writer will link to a competitor that maybe you don't want to link to. Maybe they don't realize it's a competitor. Maybe you should give them specific instructions to link to, say, a forum, which typically is not going to be a competitor in any capacity. And it's a little bit safer to do it. Or maybe you have external links that point to Reddit. It's totally up to you. Maybe you want to link to Wikipedia in every article. Whatever your instructions are, just double check and make sure it fits in. So internal and external links, those are both good to have, but it's up to you how you want to manage it. Number 5 is images. So typically an agency will have some sort of stock image that they put in. Usually it's one, depends on the company you're working with, but you can make sure it is the right format, the right size. You could check to make sure it's not a huge image. You don't want the resolution to be giant or anything like that. So you could check to make sure it fits whatever you want. This is sort of 2.0, but it is fine to have one image. It's better to have more images. So if you have a VA or something, or someone that can put images for you, or if you want to do it yourself, of course, you can go to a stock image site to get that done as well. Speaking of other media, you may want to have a YouTube video inserted in there. You can have it embedded. Some people use basically a performance plugin so that you don't have the iframe and the embedded YouTube code, which is typically kind of slow. So there are ways to make that optimized. I use a plugin that doesn't load the video all the way. It just puts in a placeholder, and then when the visitor clicks on it, it'll load the rest in. It's a little bit faster, so you don't take the performance hit. But if you have special instructions or anything like that, or if you definitely want to have a YouTube video or do not want to have a YouTube video, you should let the agency know. Now we're on to number 7, back to the written content, the written word here. And you obviously want to take a look at some of the most important pieces of the content, the most important sections, and that would be the intro, right? That's the first thing that people see. And one of the biggest sins that I see is just a long intro with too much fluff. You see this a lot with inexperienced writers that are trying to hit a word count. Typically, but not always, typically agencies are going to have that dialed in a little bit better. But to be honest with you, some agencies are run by people who don't have sites and they frankly don't know what the fuck they're doing. So it's very important to make sure an intro is tight and gets to the point. The intro should let people know what the content is about. One of the dumbest things that I've seen in content, especially in the intros, is when the writer starts defining things that are so basic and so general that it doesn't even make sense to be there. So Georgie, my dog, the border collie here, if someone Googled, what should I feed my border collie puppy? Not you. You already had your lunch. If in the first section, the intro, the person starts defining what a border collie is and the heritage and what a border collie looks like, it makes no sense. If someone is Googling what to feed a border collie puppy, they probably already have a border collie, right? They don't need to know the most basic pieces of the question that they're asking. So that's one thing to look out for. And this other agency that I worked with in the past, they actually did that on a number of articles, and not only was it misinformed, it was very fluffy. They had so much redundant content in the intro that it took 200 words before they actually got to the point. They really only needed like a 2-sentence intro, and then they can start talking about whatever the query is, whatever the question is from the searcher. So check out the intro for sure. The outro can be really important depending on how you want the outro to be done. You can summarize the rest of the content. You can end it quickly. You can leave with a call to action. So if it's a sales piece of material, if it's a product review, you might want to have a call to action at the very end. That makes sense. If someone made it all the way to the end, you should tell them, hey, here's the product that we recommend. If you are looking for the premium option, here's the one for the economic option. Whatever makes sense for your article. Number 8 is a little more specific, so it might not apply for everyone. So tables can be really important if you are dealing with the product review, like we just mentioned, or there may be other sections that are particular to the kind of content that you have. So let's say it's a recipe website. Maybe there's a very specific area in a specific format where you have the ingredients and then the steps to make whatever the meal or the recipe is. So if you have specific formatting instructions, you'll obviously want to go and double check that all those are done exactly how you want it. Number 9, this is more general, but just going over the article for grammar and spelling and style. I use Grammarly Premium. It's a little pricey depending on what you're used to. Basically, you're able to get very quick sort of readability just from Grammarly, and it does a pretty good job just to call out any issues, and you can improve the style of the article. And I find Grammarly really useful. You can also, if you have the premium version, you can use the plagiarism check to see if there's any sections that are lifted from somewhere else or really similar to other content out there. And finally, when you read the article, you should look for just general mistakes. So these could be inaccurate things. There could be some problems with maybe some of the links. So for example, one issue that I ran into with Niche Website Builders, it was just a general mistake. There was an unrelated YouTube video that was pasted into an article, and some of the content that I have, it will have multiple videos in there. They will be different videos, but in this particular case, the same video was pasted like 4 times throughout the article, which is obviously just a mistake, a general mistake. So I contacted my account manager and said, hey, the wrong video's here. And by the way, it's also pasted in there like 4 different times. So there's a problem here. Please go check it out and make sure the right video is on that article. Simple enough to fix and just a little mistake. I'm not sure what happened there. The moral of the story here is the agencies want to work with you in the future. They want you to sign up again, and they want to have a long-term relationship. So if you have suggestions, if you want things to be changed, you should let the company know. You should let your account manager or your project manager know what's going on and what you want to be done. Now, it may be that you have much higher standards and you're really demanding and they don't want to work with you anymore. If you're reasonable, like I hope I'm reasonable, if you're reasonable and you have clear instructions and you let them know what you want, it should be easy enough for them to make the changes. And in fact, if you happen to have some content where you're like, this writer is great, I want to work with this writer even more, you can let the company know and tell them that you want that writer to do the writing for you. Now, they may not be able to do it. That writer may be in a big sort of demand if they're very good. But sometimes people have an area of expertise or they're interested in the content, so they do a better job writing it for you. If you have any questions, if you have any suggestions, do let me know in the comments. And like I said, be sure to subscribe and check out the blog post over on Niche Website Builders. I'm also publishing YouTube videos that cover a different set of information. So each piece here is a little bit different. If you check out the blog, it'll have certain things. If you check out the podcast, there'll be different content there. And I think that's it for today. I'm Doug Cunnington, And we talk about niche sites and affiliate marketing and SEO. And this is Georgie. So we'll catch you in the next video. All right, girl.